Hi, this is David Williams. I'm hanging out with Chuck Hester. Chuck, I believe you are in Texas, right?
Yeah, Houston, Texas, actually.
You're doing all right. Had a good day today.
Yeah, doing real well. A lot of work for clients that are trying to navigate the new landscape, so to speak. I hate the term new normal, but yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and speaking of that, we won't say the C word during this call. We'll talk about new landscape and new normal.
There you go. That works for me.
So what we'll do, Chuck, is start with a conversation about, obviously you have an extensive background in the marketing world. And so what I'd like for you to speak to is what you see companies doing when things are rolling, and then when there's a new normal going on, and what type of advice do you try to give? Because I would imagine there would be a certain amount of consistency in there of you still need to probably do X, Y, Z, whether things are off the hook or whether things are much slower than normal. So walk me through a little of that. I'm going to jot some notes along the way, and then I may find something that you said and say, hey, Chuck, can you expand on that? So I'm going to give you the floor, my friend.
Sure, be glad to do that. And some background, I'm working in a Houston, Texas marketing agency. Our primary clients are auto dealers, restaurants, and service companies. So we've been actively involved in what I call crisis communications over the past 5 to 6 weeks, trying to get them to figure out how to communicate with their companies, customers, and figure out how they can work with the employees that they've got, all of the things that are happening. We have clients in Texas, in Wisconsin, and in Florida, so it can be a different landscape depending on where. Majority of our clients are here in Texas, but it's interesting to see how that all works. We've been working hard on making sure that the customers that we're working with understand how to talk to their potential customers. So we're working with folks that saying, hey, okay, like for instance, best description is the auto dealers. I'm here to sell a car. Everybody knows that, but what I really want to find out from you is, why do you want this particular car? How can I help you get into it? Tell me more about your family. What's going on with that? And understanding the pains and the needs of the customer and having conversations, which is somewhat unusual for particular auto dealers. Most of the time, it's here's the car of the week, and try and sell that. Now, obviously, with the new landscape, as we're calling it, because I hate the term new normal because it's not normal. With the new landscape, one of the things that we started doing almost immediately with them is saying, okay, so let's make sure that the customer understands that it's safe and that your dealership is sanitized, like the cars are sanitized. But the other interesting thing that's coming out of this is they're turning to several things. One is a virtual walk around, which is basically taking a camera, looking at the car inside and out. Usually can be done on FaceTime, and so people can actually talk to the dealer at the time that they're looking at. The other part of that is they will actually deliver a car for a test drive to that person's home, and then they can do the test drive. And then once they decide that's the car they want, they'll actually deliver that car to the customer at their home or office. We had a great story the other day. Somebody sold a car, delivered it to the customer's home. He invited them in safe distance for dinner, and they spent 2.5 hours together. So there's a relationship that'll last for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
Now, the other aspect of that is we are starting to come out of this a little bit. I don't know where you guys are on North Carolina necessarily, but on Friday, the governor here has basically said 25% occupancy for restaurants, and we're trying to move forward on this. But one of our counsels for our auto dealers in particular is, once my colleague said this way, once you let that cat out of the bag, it's hard to put it back in. So that people are going to want to be able to do test drives at their home or delivery of paperwork at their home or whatever it may be. So they're starting to make sure that happens. And then, of course, they're trying to make sure that, somebody walks in with a mask and gloves on, you've got to put your mask and glove on as well to make sure that they're comfortable with what's happening.
Yeah, with it sounds like obviously they're making adjustments that may have to become some long time ways of doing business, because hopefully they've discovered during the process that there are some benefits to doing things that way. And then obviously if if a friend says, hey, I just bought my car and this was the experience I had, that friend is probably going to expect somewhat of a similar experience. What is some of the advice that, when things are are going along not in the current state of the economy, because obviously it was only just a few weeks ago that things were what you would call the regular normal, right? You know,
Right.
so like I'm kind of with you on that new normal, because hopefully we'll all come out of it. But what was the, advice you were going into last quarter of 2019, early first quarter of 2020, when, the landscape was a lot different? How do you approach the clientele that you deal with, and what do you see the dynamics in the 3 different states that y'all work in? So talk about some of that positive energy that was going on before things got like they are now.
Yeah, and you can relate to this. I'm a writer by training, a message guy, and of course, I'm a pay it forward advocate. So this area I'm going to talk about is something that I'm having a ball with, and that's community relations. The auto dealers, the restaurants, I even have a diamond broker. All are actively involved in community relations. The one in Wisconsin is a smaller town in Wisconsin. Everybody pretty much knows everybody else. So supporting the community and doing some fun stuff in the community. One of the coolest things we did, we came up with if you know what the garden gnomes look like, there was and Green Bay Packers are huge up there. We got them a Green Bay Packer garden gnome, and what they did is our marketing people up there, they took pictures of that garden gnome in different places around the city that they're in. And then we had a contest for them to, and it was kind of blurred a little bit, or background where you couldn't quite see it. But, we set up a contest where, hey, they tell us where our Packer gnome is this week and get a chance to win a $50 gift card. We had so much engagement in regards to that, just to, have fun with the community. The other thing, and it's the Wisconsin dealers, great in regards to this, they have a very famous for that town ice cream store that they love to play with. We came up with an ice cream happy hour, where they actually went out and provided $2 of $4 worth of what is known as graffiti bucks. That's the name of the company, where they can, all the community come and get a free ice cream cone. The first time we had it out, we did 3 different times. We increased the number. By the time we were finished, we had 450 people wrapped around the building waiting to get a free ice cream cone. And believe me, they remember Scafidi for that, and they remember Scafidi for being part of the community, and that's a big aspect of where we are.
Yeah, speaking of being part of the community, as we wind down a little bit on this short conversation, you said something in there, because I've known you for years, and you are definitely one of the top people that I would think about on the pay it forward model. I mean, you mentioned pay it forward a lot. You've been doing something recently on LinkedIn. I happen to be fortunate enough to be called out on one of your posts in the last 3 weeks or so, but I've noticed at least on a weekly basis, you call out a bunch of names, and you ping people by name. And I'm thankful I made that list early on when you started that, but you ping a lot of names. Talk to me about that strategy on your LinkedIn, because I also know that you're a LinkedIn guy. So talk a little bit about that strategy on your LinkedIn and the pay it forward stuff that you have been an advocate of for years now.
Yeah, that actually started on Twitter, believe it or not. And it's, I have a term called Uplifters, and it's the folks like yourself and, several other people around the country who, if I've got an issue, they've come forward. It's, it's the 3 o'clock in the morning guy you can call and say, hey, I've got a problem. Or, in normal business hours, I've got an issue, David, can you help me out on whatever it may be? So I started the Uplifters list, golly, I'm going on 4 years probably now, something like that. And I'm testing that now with both Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook to see engagement on that. But it's fascinating to see the people that are on that list. There's a wide variety of people that I've come across, some new people here in Houston, my agency owner, for instance, and several other people. But, Craig Newmark's been on there forever, Ted Rubin, you know David Bohm very well from Campbell. So a large number of people. That to me is just basically a quick way of saying hi, and thank you for what you guys are doing, and we appreciate that. Several other good friends of mine are doing something similar, and calling people out to be able to set it up. But pay it forward to me is a lifestyle. It's not even an issue or a habit. It's something that I do without too much difficulty, especially these days, and what we're walking through. A good, for instance, and I'll shout out Michael, but Michael Watkins is a good friend of mine. 58 years old, is graduating with his master's from Campbell, and will not be going to graduation. But they have set up a website on Facebook where you basically can, you can adopt a graduate, so you can help them out and make sure that they get a good graduation in the process of doing that. So, I'm loving doing that kind of stuff. I've got another good friend of mine who's what is known as a street busker, which is basically, he's a jazz violinist. It's the guy on the corner, that used to have the guitar case or whatever open and get tips. Well, he can't get tips now because of the issues that we're running into. So we set up a fundraiser for him as well for virtual tips on Facebook to be able to do that. But that can almost become second nature, as you know, David. You're almost as good as I am in regards to that. So.
Well, I appreciate you mentioning that. And, what I find interesting is you're not just pinging two names, it's several names. And so I think it's good. Now that you mentioned the terminology uplifter, I remember you saying that and mentioned, uplifters, and you name a lot of names in there. So what I'd like for you to do now, Chuck, in the final moments, and in just a moment, in the very end of the closing, I'll give you an opportunity to mention any websites, how people can find you on LinkedIn, that type of stuff. But What are some closing thoughts that may come into your mind that you'd like to leave the audience with, some things that you may have not said that you'd like to just kind of hammer home in these final words here? I'm going to give you an opportunity to just kind of do that, bring us home, so to speak, and then we'll do the closeout portion.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been blessed since I've been in Houston to get to know one of my clients fairly well. That's a diamond broker. And he's got a great philosophy. As a matter of fact, we worked with him on messaging when he was basically shutting down and doing virtual, but he's the type of guy that he continued to pay all of his employees, or their multiple employees, during this, and making sure that was taken care of. But Fred has got a really good philosophy, and it's one that we are broadcasting as best we can, and that is, it's not what you have, it's what you give. And he's doing a lot of that. So I would just implore people that, if obviously, the hoarding of the toilet paper is over, but look around you right now. I mean, you're sitting in a room with, great leftovers and food and whatever you've got. Think about somebody that may not have that. One of the things that I do, and you guys can definitely do this as well. I buy gift certificates from restaurants, so that I know for a fact it's going to the bottom line. And when I go into a restaurant for dine out or takeaway, whatever it may be, I'm usually looking at the bill. If the bill's $30, I'm making it 60. And then I'm making sure that folks know that goes right to the wait staff, because they are under a lot of pressure to be able to handle that. So do some of those type of things as we move out of where we are right now.
Hey, I appreciate you sharing a lot of stuff. I'm just going to kind of look down at my notes. I see stuff, about supporting community, paying it forward. The part that you said is not what you have, but what you give. Now that I love, not what you have, but what you give. You've said a lot of great things today, but I think people's big takeaways, if they just think about the community, if they think about others, if they look at ways to pay it forward, look at ways to help others. It could be as simple. It doesn't have to be financial. Obviously, there was a great example of financial that you shared, but your part about uplifters and people being on that list. I mean, everybody that's listening to this right now could start their own kind of weekly uplifter post where they just call out maybe 5 people. Say, thanks for being a part of my, week this week, or thanks for being a friend, or something of that nature. So there's just so many ways that we can help others just for simple stuff like that. And so great examples that you've given us goes right in line with the Chuck Hester that I've known for years about taking care of others, looking out for the community. Thank you for joining me today. Before I do close out, I want you to mention how people can find you, whether it be on the website or LinkedIn or whatever information you'd like to share in closing that would help people locate you. Go ahead and go for that before we close out.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Chuck Hester pretty much everywhere. So on Facebook, on Twitter, on LinkedIn. If you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, I don't like generic invitations. So make sure you say, hey, I had a chance to see with you and David Williams together. That's enough for me to respond back and say, great, this will work. The cooler thing would be, if you send me an invitation saying, here's how I paid it forward this week, thanks to you. That would be awesome as well. So Facebook to me, and this, David, is more of a friends and family type place that I hang out with. LinkedIn is where I connect 90% of the time. So feel free to do that. I also have a website called chuckhester.com. for LinkedIn training for execs, and you are well aware of that because you've been through my training as well.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that information. I'll try to put a link to your website and your LinkedIn profile in the description of the YouTube video as well as the podcast. But Chuck, I want to thank you for taking time at the end of your day, because people may not realize that you've already gone through a day and you're doing this at the end of your work day. There may be things left to do, but basically the 5 o'clock whistle there in Houston is when we decided to do this. I'm a little bit later than you are, being an hour ahead, but thank you so much for taking time to share the information. And it's been a pleasure speaking with you.
Absolutely. And say hi to Brenda for me for sure.
Thanks.
All right. Take care.